They erased me. Not slowly, not reluctantly. They did it with intent, with fire and ink and the deliberate surgical precision of people who understood that the most dangerous thing in the world is not a sword, it is a story. My story. And for centuries, you did not know it. You were not supposed to. I want to tell you something that may shake you, something that disturbed the very scholars who uncovered it. The civilization that lit Europe's darkest centuries, that held the torch of mathematics and medicine and philosophy when the rest of the continent was drowning in plague and ignorance, that civilization was mine, and it was African, and it was magnificent, and almost everything you were taught says otherwise. My name has been whispered in half-truths for 1,000 years. You may know me as the Moors, but that word, Moors, it carries centuries of confusion, of intentional fog. So let me introduce myself properly, because the truth of who I am is so much larger than any label. I was not one people. I was a convergence. I was Berber, the Amazigh, the free people who had walked the Atlas Mountains and Saharan winds long before any prophet's name was spoken in the desert. I was Arab, carrying the weight and wonder of Persian astronomy, Indian mathematics, and Greek reason into a new age. And yes, I was black, sub-Saharan, West African, from the empires of Ghana and Mali and Songhai, where gold and salt and manuscripts flowed across the Sahara like blood through a living body. We were all of these things, and we crossed a narrow strip of water, the Strait of Gibraltar, in the year 711, under a Berber general named Tariq ibn Ziyad, and we changed everything.
Close your eyes. Come with me to Córdoba. It is the year 950. You step onto a paved street. Paved. Do you understand what that means? The rest of Europe walks through mud. Here, the streets are lit at night. Public lamps. 300 mosques rise against a sky so clear that astronomers spend their nights arguing with the stars. Public baths, running water, sewage systems that will not be replicated in London or Paris for another 500 years. And the libraries. I want you to feel this. The Royal Library of Córdoba held 400,000 manuscripts. 400,000. The largest library in Christian Europe at the same moment, the Monastery of St. Gall in Switzerland, had 600 books. 600. We had more than 70 public libraries. 70. And in these places, knowledge was not hoarded. It was copied, translated, shared, debated. We translated Aristotle. We translated Plato, Euclid, Ptolemy. These were not our texts. They were Greek, ancient, threatened by the collapse of Rome, by the barbarian invasions that shattered the classical world. Europe had lost them. We found them. We kept them alive in Arabic, annotated them, argued with them, built upon them. And when Europe was finally ready, when it had climbed out of the darkness enough to receive what had been saved, we handed them back. You call it the Renaissance, but the books that sparked it were ours. I built hospitals with separate wards for different conditions. I trained physicians through observation and clinical trial, not bloodletting and prayer. My surgeon, El-Zahrawi, whom the Latin world would call Abu Qasis, invented 200 surgical instruments. He performed cesarean sections. He sutured with catgut. His medical encyclopedia was the standard text in European universities for 500 years. 500 years after his death, European doctors were still learning from him, often without being told where the knowledge came from. And I introduced you to algebra. The very word is mine, from the Arabic, al-Jabr. The man who gave his name to the word algorithm, al-Khwarizmi, was my student. The numerals you use to count your money, to calculate the orbit of planets, to build every skyscraper on Earth, 0 through 9. my gift to you. Before that, you had Roman numerals. Try dividing with Roman numerals. Try building calculus with them. You cannot. Without my mathematics, your scientific revolution does not happen, not in the form you know it. And the women. Oh, let me tell you about the women. In a time when European women were forbidden from scholarship, locked out of every hall of learning, I had Walada bint al-Mustakfi, a princess who ran a literary salon in Córdoba, where men and women debated poetry and philosophy as equals. I had Lubna of Córdoba, a mathematician and poet who served as chief librarian of the Royal Library. And I had Fatima al-Fihri, a woman, daughter of a Tunisian merchant, who in 859 founded the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, the oldest continuously operating university in the world. A woman built it. A Muslim woman of African descent built the first university in human history. These are not myths. These are names in the record. These are people who breathed and thought and created, and then they were erased from your textbooks. If you want to understand my soul, look at what I built. Come to the great mosque of Córdoba. 856 columns, marble, jasper, granite, many of them salvaged from Roman and Visigothic temples I did not destroy, but redeemed. Red and white striped horseshoe arches stretching into the distance like a forest, like a grove of sacred palms. And the light, God, the light. I choreographed it. That is the only word. At dawn it enters soft and golden, and the whole space breathes. At noon it reveals every carved detail in the geometric patterns on the walls. At dusk it bleeds red across the stone, and you feel with your whole body how brief and precious everything is. I did not build this to impress you. I built it because I understood that light is the first thing the divine made, and by shaping light, I could create a space where the human and the divine could meet. Then come to the Alhambra of Granada. Come to the Court of the Lions and stand in the center and turn slowly and look at 124 white marble columns arranged in geometric precision, at the fountain held by 12 stone lions, at the water channels that divide the courtyard into four, the four rivers of paradise. Every surface is covered in zellige tilework, in patterns so mathematically complex that modern mathematicians in the 19th century would discover, astonished, that these patterns had already explored all 17 possible symmetry groups. We did not know their formal proofs. We did not need to. We felt the mathematics. We encoded it in beauty. And water, always water. In the gardens of the Generalife, water flows from one level to the next. It is not decoration, it is philosophy. It is the descent of grace from heaven to earth, made visible and audible. The sound of running water had a purpose, to quiet the noise of the world, to make room for thought, to remind you that you are alive and that life is a gift. When Christian forces reconquered these territories and saw what I had built, they could not bring themselves to destroy all of it. They were stunned. They absorbed my horseshoe arches, my geometric tilework, my principles of sacred light into their own architecture. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe, the soaring vaults, the rose windows, the pointed arches that seemed to reach for heaven, they did not emerge from nothing. They grew from seeds I planted. Architectural historians know this. The Gothic was born, in part, from contact with what I had already done. And when King Charles V authorized the construction of a Gothic cathedral inside the great mosque of Córdoba, cracking it open, destroying its harmony, he stood inside afterwards and said, "You have built what can be built anywhere, and destroyed something that was unique in the world." Even he knew, even he mourned it.
I want you to meet someone. His name is Ibn Rushd. You may know him as Averroes. He was born in Córdoba in 1126, judge, physician, astronomer, theologian. But above all, he was the man who saved Aristotle. Not literally saved. Aristotle's words still existed, preserved in Arabic translations, studied and annotated across the Islamic world. But they were not truly alive. They were old words on aging pages. Ibn Rushd brought them back to life. He read Aristotle so deeply, commented on him so precisely and profoundly, that when his commentaries were translated into Latin in the 13th century, they rewrote European philosophy overnight. Thomas Aquinas, the man Christian Europe calls its greatest theologian, built much of his Summa Theologica on Ibn Rushd's commentaries. Aquinas did not call him by name in reverence. He called him simply the commentator, because no other name was necessary. Everyone knew. Without Ibn Rushd, there is no Aquinas. Without Aquinas, there is no scholastic philosophy. Without scholastic philosophy, the European Renaissance takes a completely different form, or perhaps does not happen at all. And what did Ibn Rushd believe? He believed that God gave us two paths to truth, revelation and reason, and that if both are followed honestly, they must arrive at the same place. He believed that philosophy did not need to bow before theology, that reason had its own authority, given to us by the divine, meant to be used. They burned his books for this. They exiled him. But ideas do not burn. The ashes of his books carried his arguments to Europe on the wind. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, the Persian philosopher-physician whose canon of medicine synthesized all knowledge from Greece, Rome, Persia, India, and the Arab world. He insisted that medicine be built on observation and experiment, not inherited dogma. He tested drugs on animals before humans. He ran clinical trials. This was the 11th century. European medicine would not adopt these standards for another 500 years. And Maimonides, a Jewish philosopher born in Córdoba in 1135, living under Moorish rule, writing in Arabic, trying to reconcile Aristotelian philosophy with Jewish theology, the same project Ibn Rushd was carrying out for Islam, the same project Aquinas would later carry out for Christianity. Three men of three faiths working from the same intellectual tradition in the same cities across the same centuries. This is what Al-Andalus was. This is what conveniencia, coexistence, actually looked like. Not a utopia, not perfect. There were tensions, there were moments of persecution. But compared to a Europe where Jews were regularly massacred, where questioning the church meant death, what Al-Andalus offered was extraordinary. The radical idea that truth is not owned by any religion, that wisdom speaks through many voices, that a Jewish physician could serve in a Muslim court, that a Christian scholar could translate Arabic texts beside a Muslim colleague, that the color of your skin and the direction of your prayer did not determine the limits of your mind.
Every light eventually confronts the dark. Mine did not go out quietly. The collapse began from inside. The Caliphate of Córdoba, the government that had held my world together, fractured in 1030, splintering into dozens of small kingdoms called the Taifa states. Brilliant, cultured, sophisticated, and militarily helpless. They spent as much time fighting each other as resisting the Christian kingdoms massing in the north. And in a cruelty that still aches, they paid those Christian kingdoms tribute in gold, my gold, financing the crusade against myself. Then came the Almoravids from the Sahara, Berber fundamentalists who saw my intellectual freedom and were horrified by it. They came to help. They stayed to control. They looked at Córdoba, at my libraries and salons, at men and women debating philosophy in the same room, at the Jews in the courts and the Christians in the academies, and they began to dismantle it. More rigid law, less tolerance, this slow throttling of free inquiry. Then the Almohads, even more rigid, even more certain that God preferred their version of piety to my version of curiosity. Ibn Rushd's books were burned under their watch. Maimonides and his family fled Córdoba in the night. The Golden Age was being killed, not by Christians from the outside, but by fundamentalists from within. People so afraid of complexity that they chose purity over survival. And while I was destroying myself, Fernando and Isabella were being married in 1469, forging the union of Castile and Aragon into a superpower with the resources and the will to finish what centuries of Reconquista had started. On January 2nd, 1492, the last Moorish king, Mohammed XII, whom the Spanish called Boabdil, handed the keys of the Alhambra to Fernando and Isabella. He had nothing left. His treasury was empty. His armies were exhausted. His allies had abandoned him. Legend says he looked back at Granada as he rode into exile and wept. His mother, Aisha, cold, unbending, devastating, is said to have told him, "Weep like a woman for what you could not defend like a man." That moment, that backward glance at the city descending from view, became known as El Suspiro del Moro, the sigh of the Moor, a sigh that has echoed through 500 years of history. The terms of surrender promised us dignity. Muslims could keep their properties, practice their faith, live under their own laws. The ink was barely dry before the promises were broken. By 1501, just 9 years after the fall, the crown ordered all Muslims to convert to Christianity or leave. Those who converted, the Moriscos, were not trusted. They were watched. Their Arabic was forbidden. Their clothing was forbidden. Their customs were forbidden. And the Spanish Inquisition, a machinery of fear already grinding through the bones of converted Jews, turned its attention to them. In the same year Granada fell, in the same breath of 1492, Fernando and Isabella expelled every Jew in Spain. 200,000 people whose families had lived in Iberia for over 1,000 years, forced to leave with what they could carry. They scattered across North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, the Mediterranean, carrying their Ladino language and their grief and their memory of a world where they had once been valued. And then the burning began. More than 1 million Arabic manuscripts were thrown onto fires, 1 million books, centuries of medicine, astronomy, philosophy, poetry, history, turned to ash because they were written in the wrong language or argued for the wrong God. This was not collateral damage, this was a decision. Someone decided these ideas must not survive. Mosques became churches. The harmony of the great mosque of Córdoba was ripped apart by a Gothic cathedral inserted into its center, a structure that would have fit anywhere, planted inside a structure that existed nowhere else on earth. The sophisticated irrigation systems that had made Spain the most productive agricultural land in Europe were abandoned. The gardens withered. The water stopped flowing. Economically, Spain destroyed itself. The Moors and Jews were the merchant class, the skilled artisans, the engineers, the farmers who understood the land. Their expulsion tore out the productive heart of the country. The gold Spain was stealing from the Americas poured into religious wars in Europe instead of building the nation. Within a century, the superpower became a second-rate power. The irony is almost unbearable. They expelled the people who made them great and then couldn't understand why greatness left. But the physical destruction was only the beginning. The historical erasure was more insidious. centuries of rewriting, Moorish contributions attributed to Christian Europeans. The word Moor transformed from a description of a civilization into a slur. Renaissance paintings whitened my face, lightened my skin, erased the African features that contemporaneous chronicles described clearly and openly. They understood, the erasers, that if people knew what I had built, if Europeans knew that the Renaissance they were so proud of was built on knowledge preserved by Africans and Arabs, then the entire story of European superiority would become impossible to maintain. And that story was necessary. It was the story that justified colonialism. It was the story that made it possible to enslave an entire continent of people by insisting their ancestors had never contributed anything to human progress. Kill the history, justify the crime.
But they could not kill everything. I am stubborn. I am everywhere. I am in your mouth when you speak. Every time a Spanish or Portuguese speaker says Ojalá, God willing, they are speaking Arabic, Inshallah. Every time someone types the word algorithm, they are speaking the Latinized name of my mathematician, Al-Khwarizmi. Algebra, alchemy, alcohol, alkali, zenith, nadir, arsenal, admiral, Arabic words that entered Latin, that entered English, that are now so embedded in global language that their origins have become invisible. That is how deep my roots go. I am in the architecture of Latin America. When Spanish and Portuguese colonizers crossed the Atlantic, they brought my arches, my courtyards, my fountains, my decorative tiles, the whitewashed houses and shaded plazas of Cartagena, Havana, Salvador, Lima. They are echoes of Córdoba, which was itself an echo of cities in North Africa. My aesthetic traveled across an ocean on ships that also carried my cruelty's victims and settled into a new world without ever losing its shape. I am in flamenco, that music so associated with Spain that you'd never suspect its minor scales and complex rhythms carry the DNA of North Africa. You can hear me in it if you listen for the grief. When Leonardo da Vinci filled his notebooks with studies of optics and proportion and hydraulics and the geometry of the human body, when he designed flying machines and calculated the mathematics of beauty, he was working from source material that had passed through me. The treatise on optics that shaped Renaissance perspective was written by al-Haytham, an Arab scientist in the 11th century. The geometric proportions Leonardo applied to his paintings came from mathematical traditions that Moorish scholars had developed and transmitted. Even the anatomy, the willingness to cut open a human body and see what was actually inside, which the Church considered heresy, had been normalized by my physicians centuries before anyone in Christian Europe dared try it. When Christopher Columbus sailed west in 1492, in the same year that Granada fell, a coincidence so bitter I can barely say it, he navigated with astrolabes, quadrants, and astronomical tables that my navigators had refined. Prince Henry of Portugal built his famous school of navigation by gathering cartographers and astronomers, many of whom were Moors or had learned from Moors. The maps that opened the oceans were drawn from knowledge that West African sailors had accumulated across generations of maritime travel. Europe discovered the world using my compass. I know what you may be thinking. This is history. What does it have to do with today? Everything. False history creates false policy. When we are taught that civilization is a European invention, we build global institutions that privilege Europe. When we believe Africa was always passive, always a recipient, never a creator, we perpetuate structures of dependency that feel natural because they seem to be the order of things, the way the world has always worked. But it is not.
It was not. I am the proof. For young Africans and people of the African diaspora who have been taught that their ancestors built nothing, contributed nothing, created nothing, I am the truth that breaks that lie open. Your ancestors were not footnotes, they were architects. They mastered the most advanced science of their age. They built the most beautiful cities on earth. They debated the nature of God and reason and the universe with a sophistication that Europe would not achieve for centuries. You come from that. You come from me. This is not flattery. This is not mythology. This is the historical record hiding in plain sight, in the stones of the Alhambra, in the manuscripts still being translated, in the DNA of the Iberian population, in the words of every language on earth that carries an Arabic root. And for those of every background who inherit the modern world, I offer a harder lesson. I fell. I did not fall because I was weak. I fell because I was divided, because fundamentalism on my side and on the other proved more powerful than reason, because the diversity that made me brilliant also made me fragile when leaders chose purity over unity. The Almoravids and Almohads who dismantled my intellectual culture were my people. The intolerance that burned my libraries was not only wielded by Christian hands. This is the warning I carry across 500 years. Progress is not inevitable. Knowledge can be destroyed. Tolerance can collapse. Libraries can burn. Humanity has watched this happen before, and I am the evidence. If you value what I built, if you value science and reason and beauty and the idea that human beings of different faiths and origins can create something extraordinary together, you must protect it, not passively, actively, with institutions, with courage, with the refusal to let demagogues convince you that purity is more important than truth.
They said I was gone. They expelled me, burned my books, banned my name, painted over my face in the portraits, rewrote the chronicles. But you cannot expel an idea. You cannot burn knowledge that has already been read and lived and built into the bones of civilization. You cannot ban a language that has already given its words to every other language it touched. I never left. I am in the hospital that treats you, in the mathematics that runs the device on which you read these words, in the arch above a doorway you walked through today without noticing, in the spices in your food and the music in your ear, and the concept of zero that makes every calculation possible. I am in the story of every scholar who refused to let dogma silence curiosity, in every court where a person of a different faith was heard instead of silenced, in every library, every university, every institution that believes knowledge belongs to everyone and not just to the powerful. I am in you, in all of you, whether you know it or not. Because civilization is not the achievement of one people. It is a relay. A long, complicated, painful, brilliant relay across centuries and continents, where each generation receives the torch from the last and either carries it forward or lets it fall. I carried it for 800 years. I carried it through Córdoba and Granada and Toledo. I carried it in the hands of physicians and poets and astronomers and architects who believed that beauty was not a luxury, but a necessity, that creating a world worth living in was the highest possible act of worship. They tried to make you forget me, but now you know. And now that you know, you cannot unknow. The torch is in your hands. Do not let it fall. You have built what can be built anywhere. and destroyed something that was unique in the world. King Charles V of Spain, on the destruction of the Great Mosque of Córdoba.